After the successful creation of a new unusual interchange that was put in place to support some major medium density apartment expansion, the city has decided to invest more money into the infrastructure for further highway connectivity. Today we'll be grabbing inspiration again from another weird interchange, and this one found in Lee's Summit, Missouri. We are going to have the challenge of being able to make this work alongside the existing railway, and I think we've managed to come up with a solution for it, although it's not exactly safe. In fact, it's really dangerous. It could be the riskiest junction in the entire city. So let's dive in. So we're going to be building along this spot today, and rather than building the junction directly off the arterial, I'm going to be using this collector road. It seemed a good point to join on from the highway. We do have another connection onto the arterial just directly to the south, so this seemed like an appropriate and natural point to connect to that network. We do have a really simple road hierarchy set up in the city by design, but I don't mind breaking that every now and again when I think it makes sense. So this interchange is going to run alongside our big postal facility and our industrial or our office park, and on the other side of the road we've got the big sports complex as well. Now, neither one of these facilities are generating huge amounts of traffic, and given that we're going to have highway connections to the south and to the north pretty nearby, I'm not too concerned about this interchange getting super high traffic. So what that means is that we can make something kind of unusual, but I'm not overly concerned about it getting too congested later down the line. Here, I'm just going to pull out the road from the collector, and I want a two-way road from that collector. We're going to split them off. So what I'm going to do with that then is to create a bit of a crossroads, and we're going to have an element of a divergent diamond interchange on this side of the highway. And just shortly here, I'm going to create the crossroads. I'm going to create it directly on the railway. These two roads will connect again on the other side of the highway. They will converge near a roundabout, but there will be ramps where traffic can leave the highway and avoid any potential congestion on said roundabout. I wanted to create an access road for traffic looking to join northbound onto the highway, and I wanted that to join the single crossing node so we can have one single large railway crossing rather than having separate animations on the barriers. So it was just a case of using the complex curve and swerving it in towards the existing junction until it connected to that existing node. I'll be able to restrict the left turn, so it should act as a dedicated ramp for that highway access. The highway bridges do shoot off at quite an angle, so I'm going to curve them in slightly and bring them over to a more central converging point. Then I'll go ahead and get the initial roundabout in, and we'll get a feel for the overall positioning. Now, these things don't always go in first time, so quite often it's just the case where we just delete and redraw until we're happy with the scale and the angles. Of course, with this roundabout here, it would be capable of handling multiple small local connections, but just for simplicity at this point, and given that we don't have the development ready just yet, I'm going to create a single connection road coming off that roundabout on the other side, but there will be plenty of scope later on to add to that once we start building in this area across the highway. With the main roads of the interchange pretty much in place, I'm going to get the ramps in and make sure the general positioning on these look correct. I'm going to use a simple one lane on each of the ramps, but there's scope there to add lanes if we need them later down the line. I want these ramps looking good, so I will take a bit of time and we'll get everything nice and smooth and curvy. With the oncoming ramp from the southbound traffic looking to enter the existing development area, I'm going to repeat the process that we did earlier on, and I'm going to curve the access road into that single node junction. Again, so it will utilise the crossroad animation all as a single crossing, so pretty much same idea as earlier, we just restrict the left turn so it's straight ahead only. I think I'm happy with the overall layout. It's quite a big footprint on this one, but I'm okay with that. I'm not necessarily going for efficiency, certainly not going for safety. I just want something that looks cool and unusual again in this part of the city. You could at this point leave it, as it's completely functional, it will work and it will shift the traffic, but of course on this channel we're not going to be doing that. I wanted that road looking a bit smoother from the initial railway junction to the main railway junction. So I redrew that section of road and I used Move It, and I just shifted the road about a little bit, try and get it looking a bit better. There were a couple of points on the main highway bridges where it looked a bit uneven, didn't look too smooth, so I went and redrew them in along with one of the on-ramps as well. Once I was happy with them, I went and added some key walls, and we'll use them to add contrast, and we'll use them to add height to our connections as well. Once the key walls are in, I'm going to pick various heights between the roads, and we'll get some really smooth looking, nice terraforming in place. It does take a bit of time, but I strongly recommend it. It looks much better, and we'll use the slope tool and the terrain tool, flatten tool extensively to get those areas looking nice and smooth. So a few other things to do. I went and tidied up a few bits and pieces that weren't quite looking the part. I needed to shift a couple of nodes about and move it, and I redid one of the ramps on the other side of the highway as well. I added an extra lane over there simply because it was just looking a little bit better, it was looking a little bit smoother, and I was struggling for some reason with that as a single lane. It's a strange one. Now it's time to have a closer look at that diverging diamond railway crossing. At first glance it doesn't look too bad, as there are of course plenty of railway barriers to give the appearance that things are nice and safe. The fatal flaw here, however, though, is the road traffic crossing. This type of interchange needs a traffic light on the crossroad, and here's how it should work. As you can see, each side can cross safely in sequence with a basic two-phase light. Without it, in real life, there would be real consequences, and it would, I would imagine, be the scene of a number of serious accidents or even fatalities, and that's even before we take into consideration that there's a high-speed railway running through the bloody thing as well. Can you imagine? It would be carnage. Sadly, I don't have the option to add a traffic light to this node, as I guess the railway junction functionality takes priority, I would imagine. I think even if I could, it would still really be high risk regardless. I could never see this thing getting built in real life. Well, I wouldn't want to be going anywhere near it anyway. Nonetheless, I think it's cool. It's definitely staying in the city, even if it's going to reduce our population a bit. I want to add a bit of detail as usual to this interchange and make it look just as good as I can. The first thing I'm going to do is grab some decals and create a number of railway crossing signs directly on the road. So to do this, I'm going to use a mix of the white net lanes just for the simple lineage, and then I'm going to use the lettering decals for the capital R's. Now when I'm doing this, I might have to adjust the terrain height here and there. If the terrain's a little bit below the road, it won't show up. That's a nice little detail you might expect to see. That said, I'm not 100% sure if you would get them with the active crossing, with the barriers. Obviously a lot of you guys are from the US, I'm sure you'll let me know if that's the case or not. Nonetheless, they're in, they're not going anywhere. At a few points where the lines were broken on the interchange, I'm just going to draw them back in and use the curves with the net lines again. I wanted to add a bit of colour to this junction, and I'm gonna kind of go for something like this I found online, and the way we're going to create it is just with the surface. I'm going to use Algendo surfaces again, the yellow one. We're going to create that additional surface on top. Now once that's in place, it was obviously a little bit bright, so I'm going to use one of Broman's dirt decals, or surfaces rather, and that should tone it down a little bit. I went ahead and created a little bit more obvious separation with the white chevrons. They always look pretty good, and it's probably something I should be doing a bit more of when I'm making these interchanges. Sadly, one thing I couldn't fix was a little bit of jank on the road section. I think when I was using Move It, I probably kind of broke one of the nodes a little bit, but I did try a number of times to rebuild it or shift it back in place, and it just didn't happen. So a little bit of an imperfection there. It's absolutely going to bug me, but Short of deleting and rebuilding the section, it's gonna have to stay. Over on the other side of the highway, I'm going to jump onto the roundabout now, and I'm going to use the same trick we did in previous episodes with the roundabouts, and we'll just shift them in place and then I can add some colour onto it once I'm happy with the elevation on it. You're going to see me use a surface here, which again is one of Elgendo's surfaces. This one is the bus lane surface that he's done. This surface is in his mod, which is in PDX mods. However, I've amended the draw order on this one so it will not draw on roads or pavements, it will always appear underneath, and it's really useful for creating colourful, smooth additions to our highway ramps and our roundabouts. If you want to get your hands on the surface, just jump on the Discord, I'll have it available for you there, and you can say hello to Elgendo while you're there. I'm going to go and finish off the additional bits and pieces on the corners, using the paths as guidelines, much the same as no doubt you've probably seen in other videos, and we're going to give that impression that we're extending out the infrastructure. Once I get that in place, I will give some basic detailing on the roundabout. I'm going to use Broman surfaces at points to add a little bit of a better texture to some of the plain concrete surfaces, and I'll be adding some additional lighting both on the road as part of a network, and also as standalone props. We'll use some of the really big ones. There'll be plenty of opportunity to add a bit of colour through some vegetation, and we'll add a couple of custom type planters, and a little colourful pedestrian walkway I think for future expansion would look pretty nice over beside the DDI element. So I'm going to crack on with all of that, should only take a couple of minutes. And I'll get some additional background vegetation added, and I wanted to clear that vegetation under the high capacity electricity cables as well. They shouldn't be there, should they? So should take me a minute or two, and I'll catch up with you in a minute. So I reckon by paying some attention to detail around the roads has paid off. This section of the interchange looks so good close up, and I think clearing the trees and then having the big props like the pylons and the tall light really mix well with the quay walls, surfaces and planters. Regardless of whatever angle you look at that railway crossing, it is still striking a bit of fear into me, but having a look at the overhead shot, you can see those curves accentuated by the shadows, and the additional surface work really do stand out. I'm happy with this one. It's weird, but I love it. I do have something special planned for Cape Lomond very soon. It's not road related, which might surprise you given it TDW's amazing mod. It's just been released, but if I can get my build to work, I'll have it out to you next week with a bit of luck. Thanks again everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.